What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Know Your Enemy. My name is Trendkill, and you may be wondering why I have my sweatshirt zipped all the way up like a weirdo. There's a story behind that, but first, intro. So in the spirit of continuity, I do my best to wear a Smite shirt in every one of these videos. However, I don't really have that many, so I contacted Hi-Res Andy, who's a wonderful guy, and he very quickly shipped me out some Smite shirts to use in front of my green screen. However, there was one problem. Yeah, the shirt he sent me was green. Thanks, Andy. So now I get to move around the screen like a complete idiot, and I'm just gonna intro the video like this. So if you haven't seen this series before, go check out my Neath guide. That will give you information on what this series is gonna be about. Also, if you don't know the basic MOBA terminology, go check out my beginner's guides. Those are going to show you basic MOBA terminology and things that you may hear me say in this video. So let's go ahead and jump into the guide. Today we're gonna be talking about Ra, the Egyptian sun god. So the first thing we do in this series is we take a brief look at a visual representation of the god's ability. Now you can quickly see from the chart that Ra is statistically a pretty average god, a little mobility, utility, defense, and control, but he really excels in damage and healing. So while Ra doesn't really excel in one specific area, he is pretty good in all areas, making him a jack of all trades type god. The one thing that really separates Ra from a lot of the other characters in Smite is the fact that he is one of the very few gods that can heal his team. There are a lot of gods that have sustaining abilities where they can kind of heal themselves, but there's a very few that can heal other people. Ra is one of those few. So the fact that he can heal, coupled with the fact that he is average at everything and he has the ability to put out a ton of damage, makes him one of the stronger gods in the game. Alright, so let's move on and talk about Ra's kit. His abilities are pretty straightforward, so this is going to be a very short section. However, let's briefly touch on some of the highlights. Now, his passive Speed of Light is not really an integral part of his kit, and I don't say that meaning that it's a bad passive. I just say that meaning that it's not something like Neath's Broken Weaves that are going to really interact with the way her kit works. But Speed of Light is going to give you an 8% speed boost, or a movement speed increase, every time he uses an ability, and that stacks up to 3 times. So Ra can and will, in a fight, almost always be about 25% faster than you. Now, if you couple his fully stacked passive with his second ability, Divine Light, which applies a slow, that makes it extremely hard to get away from or catch up to him. Now, also, what you may not know is Divine Light is a 2-second channeled ability, and at the end of that 2 seconds, it detonates and blinds you. Your entire screen will go white. Now, this is just like a flashbang in any first-person shooter ever. If you turn away when it detonates, you will not be blinded. So this is something you're going to have to get extremely used to timing correctly. Otherwise, it's a real pain in the ass in a team fight. Now, as far as his third ability, Solar Blessing, is concerned, that is literally just an AoE on the ground that heals him and his team and damages all enemies that are inside it. And his first ability, Celestial Beam, and his last ability, Searing Pain, are literally just damaging abilities with no additional effects. So that's pretty much it for his kit. Now, just because his kit is simple does not mean it is not effective. His utility is in quickly burning down minion waves, being able to get around the map quickly while healing him and his teammate, as well as his massive AoE slow. Ra is not to be taken lightly. Alright, on to the mechanics section. Now remember, we talked about the fact that Ra is a very straightforward god, so he doesn't have a ton of tricks up his sleeve, so this video may be shorter than most. However, we're going to do everything we can to give you enough tips to where you feel comfortable fighting a Ra. Now, as always, we're going to start with his first ability, Celestial Beam. There is not a ton to say about this ability. However, understand that this is one of the best pushing abilities in the game. This ability has a very long range, fires in a straight line, it's almost impossible to miss, and after you get a couple points in it, it will kill an entire minion wave in one shot. Now, if he combos that with his third ability, Solar Blessing, you have no minion wave, and he's got a fully healed minion wave pushing right into your tower. So he's very good at making sure you lose gold by letting the tower help you kill your minions. Now, when we're talking about Solar Blessing, understand that Solar Blessing's heal portion is actually pretty powerful, and it's powerful enough to keep large minions alive under tower while they're taking tower shots. So Ra is notorious for throwing a solar blessing up and walking away and letting the minions kill the tower themselves. So if you happen to be laning against a Ra, be very careful leaving your tower unattended. And since we're already talking about solar blessing, let's go ahead and get the solar blessing tips out of the way. This one may seem obvious, but don't stand in the solar blessing. It doesn't seem like it's doing a lot of damage, but over time, that damage adds up, and it adds up quickly. So if you're fighting a Ra and he's standing in his solar blessing, make sure that you can kill him without question. Otherwise, he's going to slowly be ticking up in health, and you're going to be slowly ticking down in health, eventually giving him the advantage. Alright, now we've already kind of touched on Divine Light a little bit, but let's pop back and go into a little more detail. Now remember, this ability slows enemies. If he happens to catch you with all 6 stacks of Divine Light, it will slow you for 30%. Add that to the 8% that he gains from his passive, and that is a 38% speed swing. If he happens to have all 3 stacks of his passive active, that is a 54% speed difference, which is a colossal amount in such a fast-paced environment. Very early on in the game, this can be a very devastating ability, so do not underestimate it. Also, don't forget about the blind on this ability. It is one of 2 blinding abilities in the game, so it's a very rare form of crowd control, and it creates a ton of confusion. If you get caught in the middle of a team fight blind, you have no idea what's going on around you, and bad times are sure to follow. Now, this video, again, like I said, has gone much faster than most of the other guides probably will, but we only have a couple more tips before we're finished. Let's discuss Searing Pain. First thing, understand that this ultimate does a high amount of damage on a very, very short cooldown. With cooldown reducing items, this ability can get down to around 30 seconds, which is ridiculously short for such a high damaging ability. At that short of a cooldown, Ra can use it to clear a minion wave, and by the time the next wave gets to lane, the ability is almost ready again. So a lot of the times what you'll see a Ra do is you'll see them clear a wave with Searing Pain only to back, and by the time they get back to the lane, it's ready to use again, so they haven't wasted anything. And that's something you can't really say about most of the ultimates in the game. Now, the last tip that I have is for both Searing Pain and Celestial Beam. Both of these abilities can go through walls. So remember, if you happen to be running from a Ra, taking a sharp turn around a corner is not going to save you from his abilities. Actually, some of the most fun I've had in the game, and one of the most exciting things to watch in this game, are trying to guess where your enemy's going to run and smacking them with a Searing Pain when they're least expecting it. The bad thing about this is if you're running and you hear Ra starting to charge up that Searing Pain, you've got a very, very short time to try to decide, do you go left, do you go right, do you go front, do you go back, and half the time you're going to juke back into a Searing Pain and die anyway. So it's a very, very scary ability when you're playing a Ra who knows how to aim a Searing Pain shot. So there you have it, guys. Short and sweet. Ra is not a very complicated god, so there's not a lot of information to be passed around, but hopefully this video gave you enough to at least understand what Ra is capable of. So I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here, guys. Thanks for stopping by. Make sure you come back next week where we're gonna be talking about Thor, the god of thunder.